Hi, and welcome to the saxophone fingering section. Now, generally speaking, the fingering system for the saxophone is pretty simple, pretty easy to learn, and we'll often hear people talking about how easy the saxophone may be to learn as compared to some of the other instruments out there, but they're just talking about the fingering, of course, which is one of the easiest systems. Of course, after the fingering comes the more daunting part of getting a big, beautiful sound, and that'll take a lot longer than just learning the fingering. But some key points here is to not only learn all your notes from the low B flat to the high F sharp, but you got to memorize them, and they got to become second nature. Like you just have to just play all the notes without looking at the fingering charts. It's of course you're going to learn by looking at these fingering charts and watching my positions on the keys and all that. But try and memorize them as quickly as you can, and all of them. If you're just starting out, that might be a daunting thought, but stick to it. It'll come. And make sure you pick up on all that music notation and theory that's included at the end of these first few saxophone fingering lessons, because you really should know the musical notes and some of the theory aspects of it, like the 4/4 time, the musical staff, what the key signature is and what the time signature is. And these are all simple things that we all got to learn to be able to read music. And if you read music, great. And if you don't read music at all, please take advantage of these simple first lessons, because you could really go a long way in learning even very simple, basic music notation and theory. There's an interesting lesson here, or a valuable lesson, and that's the one that's about the 4 ways to play a B flat. There's a common couple of ways, and then maybe a couple of ways that you might not hear about so much, or you might not even need to use them, but you may find them easier to play in certain situations, musical situations, coming from one note to the next, or a certain trill, things like that. So do check that out. I went years and years not knowing those 4 ways. I mean, I still don't use. I never use one of them, probably ever. I might use the third one very rarely, and then there's 2 that I use all the time. So you learn them all, and you start to see which one feels more comfortable in your daily exercises, and you'll figure out your favorites. But do learn all 4. So after you know all the notes from the lowest B flat to the highest F or F sharp, some saxophones have an automatic F sharp key. If you just have the high F, just worry about the high F. But most newer saxes will have the high F sharp key. And you'll know from the fingering lessons if yours does or doesn't. So from the bottom of the horn to the top of the horn, once you know all the fingerings, then you're ready to incorporate the magical chromatic scale into your daily practice. The chromatic scale simply means playing every note one after the other. You don't miss any notes. It all goes up in a semitone. And being able to play that, even at a slow tempo, from the bottom of the top up and down smoothly, will do wonders for you, for your technique, to smooth out your technique. When I was in Toronto going to college, or living in Toronto studying, I was at a college one time, and this other young student was talking to me about playing sax and this and that, and we were talking about chromatic scales, and he said, "How many chromatic scales do you know?" And I looked at him kind of funny, and I said, "Well, I know all of them." And he goes, "Wow, you know all of them?" "Well, I'm trying to learn them all." I thought this was hilarious, because a chromatic scale, uh, there are, I mean, you're just playing all the notes one after the other. So if you start on a B and you go up, 12 notes to the other B, well, that's a B chromatic scale. If you start on a C, you're playing the same notes, except you're just starting on a different note, right? So once you know all the chromatic notes, you can say that you know all the chromatic scales, right?